What is going on, YouTube? I am Lamont at large. Today, I am in Kilgore, Texas. We're going to talk about the Kentucky Fried Chicken massacre that occurred right across the street from me almost 40 years ago. Let's go back to Friday, September 23rd, 1983. If you live in Texas or you visited Texas, there's many things that people in Texas take very, very seriously. One of those things, believe it or not, is high school football. They do not play when it comes to high school football out here in Texas. I've seen with my own eye stadiums that hold 15 or 20,000 people for high school football games. That Friday night, the high school out here in Kilgore is playing against a crosstown rival, and there is a lot of people at the game. Those stands are absolutely packed. And on those big high school football game nights, a lot of these restaurants, fast food places, they'll get busy before the game, and then they'll take the food to the game, or they'll get busy after the game, so forth and so on. On that night, Kentucky Fried Chicken was very, very busy. They've actually, that night, had record sales. You had 3 employees who busted their butts after a long, hard day. You can imagine what the Kentucky Fried Chicken looks like. Everything is covered in grease, flour, chicken. I worked at a chicken place. It could get very smelly and very, very, very messy. You had 3 employees who were working that night closing up the restaurant. You had Mary Tyler, she was the assistant manager, 37. You had Opie Hughes, an employee, 39. And Joey Johnson, the other employee, he was 20. It was such a mess. And Joey had a party to go to with his friends. So an off-duty employee, 20-year-old David Maxwell, stopped by with his friend Monty Landers, 19 years of age, to help them clean up the mess so they can get to the party in time. Because if it wasn't for them, they would have been there until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning cleaning that place up. So they're cleaning the place up, and Joey Johnson goes out to take out the trash, and that's where he's approached by a couple individuals with guns. They immediately put guns to Joey, bring him inside. This is a robbery. Everybody get your hands up. They got guns on everybody. Now, it is only my guess of what actually happened, but a robbery took place. Not sure if there was any kind of fights or if there was any kind of a struggle, but for some unknown reason, they decided to kidnap everybody in the restaurant and drive them in a vehicle out of town. This crime that was committed was one of the absolute worst robberies in East Texas history. Now, there was a little bit of evidence left at the scene of the crime. There was a napkin that had blood on it, and there was also blood on the register tape there at the KFC. This eye care center is the place where KFC once stood. You can imagine in the back right here is where Joey was taking out the trash when they approached him right here. Now, there's been a little bit of hearsay on why the robbery took place. It looks like when the robbers were casing out the restaurant, they might have accidentally heard somebody say that the restaurant had made $29,000 in sales instead of $2,900. That's only a rumor. You know, people's memories get lost over years. I don't know what was going through the robbers' minds as why they decided to kidnap these people. They already had the money. Why do this? And that is the back door to this place right there. All right, so right now what we're gonna do is we're going to drive about 16, 17 miles. We're gonna head down towards Henderson, Texas, that general area, and that's where they were taken to an empty oil field lease. Can you absolutely imagine the horror and the terror that's possibly going through your mind as you're being driven down a lonely country road such as this? Back in those days, there was none of these houses out here. This was just all oil lease land. Hardly any houses, hardly anything around here at all whatsoever. And possibly you're thinking, okay, why are they taking us here? What do they want with us? They already got the money. And then your life starts flashing before your very eyes. The fear of being kidnapped, robbed, and being led to your impending doom is absolutely, in my own estimation, very terrorizing. I often put myself in other people's positions and pretend, that maybe I was there, or maybe just try to at least pretend to know what they were possibly going through before the moments of their life. And this is where it ended. They were brought here, bound and gagged. One of the female victims was raped, and they were all shot and killed right in that house right there. If you can see it right in the middle of your screen, that is about the general area where they were murdered. It would be right where that old barn is. That same night, one of the victim's kids was supposed to pick her up from work, and when they arrived to the KFC, they didn't see anybody there. Everybody was gone, and it looked kind of messed up. They got very concerned and they called the police. The police came by, and at first they thought, well, maybe the managers and the kids kind of went out to a restaurant like a Denny's, or they went to go party or whatever. But somebody the next morning, September 24th, 1983, discovered all 5 victims shot and killed execution style at that field that I just showed you. And Mary Tyler was the woman that was raped. Her body was about 50 yards away from the others. When they were going through the crime scene, they seen a napkin that was balled up and it had some blood on it, and they seen some blood on the register tape. Now, of course, then they still collected the evidence, but there was no DNA technology to find who did this crime, and they wouldn't find out who committed that crime for another 21, 22 years. And then in 2005, with the advent of DNA technology, they received a hit. A man who was already in prison serving 40 years to life for drug distribution by the name of Darnell Hartsfield. His blood came up as a hit from the crime scene. And also the blood of Romeo Pinkerton was found there as well. And he, of course, they happened to be related. They were cousins. Pinkerton was only out of prison 2 days before those murders took place, and he was arrested for robbing I believe it was a gasoline station 3 days after the murders. Now, these guys, of course, they denied absolutely everything. So when they get their DNA at the crime scene, of course, when they collected the DNA from Mary Tyler, I mean, that was just going to be even more evidence. However, that DNA did not match either of the two men, which led authorities to believe that there was a third guy. And they pressed these guys. They said, who's the third guy? They wouldn't tell who it was. So with the DNA against them, they went to trial. It was separate trials, of course. And Hartsville trial was actually moved out of town down to Bryan, which is about a 2-hour drive down southwest, I believe. He was facing life in prison. He was charged with 5 counts of first-degree murder. He was eventually found guilty. Romeo Pinkerton, he was charged with the 5 counts, but he was facing the death penalty. I do not know why they gave one life and the other one the death penalty when it comes to the trials, but that's what happened. And just as he was about to go to trial, he finally confessed to these murders. Later on, however, when you go watch interviews of these two idiots, well, Hartfield, he will do an interview. The other guy, he doesn't do interviews, but they both have denied any involvement. They're one of the men's attorneys tries to say that, oh, hey, how do we know that the DNA really is a hit on my client? You're talking about 1983, where guys are just collecting blood with their hands, and it could have been fouled or whatever stupid excuse he was using. However, the jury didn't buy it. You got the DNA there. I mean, it's obvious that you guys committed the crime. A side note to this story, before they got these guys on the DNA, there was a man that was arrested for these murders by the name of James Earl Mankins Jr. A little bit after the murders happened. He was a local druggie, pretty much, and his father was a state representative. So they tried to get him on these murders. During the autopsies, they discovered a fingernail of the would-be suspect in the belt loop of Joey Johnson. And how they determined that that guy did not commit the crimes, the guy I'm talking about is, of course, James Earl Mankins Jr., is that they did a nail test on his nail versus James's nails. Kind of, I guess you're lining up the ridges, almost like a fingerprint, except for fingernails. And, of course, he vehemently denied having anything to do with that. And they had absolutely no proof that he did it. This was just hearsay. This was nothing more than just pretty much a witch hunt for this guy. And the only thing that they had on him was that he was a criminal, and maybe they thought that he killed them all. One guy kidnapping 5 people, 3 able-bodied teenagers. I don't know. But he was eventually cleared of all charges when the nail test came back negative. It wasn't his nail. They had absolutely no proof, and they let him go. So currently, right now, these 2 clowns are in prison for the rest of their lives. Pinkerton, of course, took a deal to avoid the death penalty before the trial started. And killed 5 people for about $2,900. Just 3 vicious monsters, 2 of them in prison. One of them is a free person right now, free man. They've refused to give up the name. There was, during the Pinkerton trial, there was a audio tape that a prison informant made of Pinkerton admitting that there was a third guy. But in that recording, which was very difficult to listen to because the microphone, I guess, was, not in an area where he could be easily heard. He did not say that he was there. He just said that there was a third guy there, but he did not admit having anything to do with it. Our first stop here is at the Davis Cemetery here in Henderson, Texas. This is where David Maxwell is buried. At the time of these murders, he was going to Kilgore Community College, and he was working, I believe it was part-time, at the KFC. This kid right here, he was married and had a baby on the way. and his life was cut short by 3 monsters. That night, he was on his motorcycle giving his friend a ride. If he had a car, his wife would have jumped in the car and headed to the KFC to help them clean up. So there would have been a 6th victim, but only because he had a motorcycle and you can't ride 3 people on a bike. Here lies David Wayne Maxwell. In the morning of his day, in youth and love, he was taken away. He's buried next to his big brother, Donald Richard Maxwell. A family to bury 2 sons, very unnatural, to say the least. Now we are at the Overton Cemetery here in Overton, Texas, and this is the grave of Joey Johnson. Just barely a week after he turned 20 years of age. And all he wanted to do was get off of work and go to a party. Overall good guy, and a lot of people said this guy was an exceptional athlete. Now we're at the Friendship Cemetery in Gladewater, about 15 minutes from Kilgore. And this is the grave of Montgomery Landers. Loved by all who knew him. This was the only person killed that did not work at Kentucky Fried Chicken. He just came in there to help his friends. And I'm assuming right next to him would be his grandparents. There's another Landers right there, Chris Landers, and another Landers, JL and Georgia Landers. I would guess those could possibly be his parents over there. I'm sure the parents probably had it planned to where they were going to be buried next to their parents, and they had to give this spot to their son. And now we are at the Kilgore Memorial Garden Cemetery here in Kilgore, Texas. And this here is the grave of Mary Louise Tyler, March 18th, 1946 to September 23rd, 1983. I feel very sad. I don't know where her family is. I don't know if she's related to anybody around her. And Very, very sad. I feel like she's out here by herself. Very horrible tragedy, to say the least. As the sun is setting, I'm gonna hit the road. The last victim of this tragedy is about 305 miles away in early Texas, so we're gonna start heading out. And 304 miles away, here we are at the Staley Cemetery here in early Texas. And this would be the last grave of the 5 victims of that horrific tragedy that occurred back in Kilgore, Texas. I'm walking upon the grave of Opie Hughes. Quite a desolate area, if I do say so myself. And this is Opie Ann Heatley Hughes's final resting place, February 16th, 1944 to September 23rd, 1983. That is her husband, Stone Jackie Wayne Hughes. I do not know if he's still alive. I don't know if he remarried, things like that. You really don't know. But oftentimes we all work our jobs. We go to work every day, and working at a fast food place isn't a dangerous job. And little did those individuals know that that day, that would be their last day on this earth. And the scumbags who committed these atrocious crimes are right where they deserve to be. And let's not forget, there is also a third person that is out there that the police are looking for. They do believe that there was a third person's DNA, and they're looking for this person. They believe that they were involved in this crime as well, even though the individuals deny that they were in on it. Rest in peace to all the victims. My condolences to the families as well. Okay, guys, down the road I go to the next story, but thank you for watching my video, and I will come at you on the next one. God bless. Peace out.